God's people had lived in Babylon for 70 years. Then King Cyrus, the king of Persia, took over Babylon and let them go home. Some of God's people went home to Judah. But some of them stayed in Babylon. Nehemiah stayed and worked for the king of Persia. One day, some people came from Judah. Nehemiah asked, "How are God's people in Jerusalem?" "The people are in trouble. The walls around Jerusalem are broken down, and the gates are burned down." Nehemiah cried. Then he spent time praying and fasting. The king noticed Nehemiah and asked, "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you sad?" Nehemiah was afraid. No one was supposed to be sad around the king. Nehemiah said, "The city where my ancestors are from is in ruins." The king sent Nehemiah to Jerusalem. Nehemiah led the people to start rebuilding the walls and gates. The workers worked hard, rebuilding the walls and the doors with bolts and bars, and they cut stones and lifted them into place on the wall. And they filled gaps and holes all around the city. But not everyone was happy that Jerusalem's walls were being rebuilt. Some men who lived nearby made an evil plan to attack the people and stop their work. God's people prayed and chose men to guard the walls all day and all night. Nehemiah reminded the people that God was with them. "Don't be afraid," he said. "God is great and powerful. Be ready. If our enemies attack us, God will fight for us." Enemies could threaten God's people, but they could not make God's people stop building. Their enemies were not in charge of rebuilding the wall. God was. So God's people went back to work. Some stood guard with weapons, and others worked on the wall. Some men worked with one hand and held a weapon in the other. They were always ready to fight just in case. Nehemiah was a wise and good leader for God's people. In just 52 days, the wall was complete. The gates were repaired, the wall was restored, the city was ready for more of God's people to come home. When all of Jerusalem's enemies heard that the wall had been rebuilt, they were afraid because they knew that God was with his people. Nehemiah led the people to rebuild the walls around Jerusalem to protect them from their enemies. Jesus came to protect us from our greatest enemies, sin and death. He died on the cross and rose from the dead to rescue everyone who trusts in him.
Catechism, meow, meow. Catechism, meow, meow. Catechism, meow, meow. Everybody gather around to hear the catechism. Meow, meow, meow. Woo! Hey everybody, it's me, Kevin the Cat, and we're here to talk about the catechism. And today, our very special guest is none other than Pastor Rob. Hey Pastor Rob, how are you?
Hey Kevin, I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. So today we're going over catechism question number 6, and it says, how can we glorify God?
That's a really good question, Kevin, and the answer to that is we glorify God by loving him and by obeying his commandments and laws. Do you know what God's commandments are?
I'm not really sure. Could you tell me?
Well, they're the 10 commandments, right? And so what it's saying in this question is we can glorify God by loving him and by obeying his 10 commandments, by obeying his commandments and laws.
Does that mean that if we just obey the 10 commandments that God would just love us more? And more than like people who don't love the 10 commandments?
Well, No, not exactly, Kevin. I can get where you're getting at with that, and I can understand where you're going, but we obey God's commandments because we love him, right? And so out of our love for God is we obey his commandments and his laws, and knowing that it doesn't make God love us any more or any less, and knowing that we are loved by God because of what Jesus Christ has done for us on the cross.
Wow, that's so crazy. That's so cool. So like what you're saying is that obeying God's commandments and laws doesn't make him love us anymore. But we obey him because we love God.
That's exactly it, Kevin. We obey God's commandments and laws because we love him, not because it makes him love us more. And because of that, we glorify him with our lives in the way that we treat others, in the way that we respond to God's word by responding to his word. Because here's the thing, right? Is if we say we love someone, right, Kevin? If we say we love someone and they ask us to do something and we say, yes, I love you and I'll do that, but we don't actually do it, do you think that they would actually think that we love them?
I could see where like I would get like kind of like upset if somebody said that they were gonna do something and they didn't do that and they just kind of were like not lying to me.
Exactly, Kevin, right? And so when we say that we love God, is that because of our love for God, is we want to honor him, we want to glorify him, we want to treat him with the honor and the respect that God is due, right? Knowing that it doesn't make him love us any more or any less, but knowing that because we are loved by God, that we live our lives to glorify him.
Wow, that's really cool and that's really awesome and that's really good to know that we can't do anything to make God love us more, but we live our lives to glorify him by loving him and obeying his commands and laws. So that's it for this week on the Catechism, and we'll see you next week, kids. Bye.